Good evening, and welcome to tonight's Halloween special of Truth Proof. Have fun!
Hey,
Wow, what a great
Well done.
opening for the show.
thank you, and all good. And thanks for doing that for us, Alison. Welcome, Ian. Welcome, Les.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, well, we've got a few more people coming in, and I can see Nick Kyle's trying. He's got a bad internet connection, I think. So just before we do get kicked off, I'll just see if he's there. And no, when we see him come in, we'll have another go at it. So
Right, okay, yeah, we're waiting for one more guest to come on stream. I think he's having difficulty. He's having difficulty as well. That's Tony Worrall. So we'll wait for Tony, and yeah, but we're good to go. We're good to go.
Well, as people know, tonight we're just going to talk about a few ghostly things. I mean, if it deviates and slips into something else, that's fine. But let's try and keep it ghostly. So we might not get as many questions out tonight, depending, because already we know Nick and Sarah should be coming on. Nick and Sarah Kyle, but they're having internet problems. I know Paul Bestel's going to come on about 8 o'clock, and David Hodrean has said that he's got a few ghost stories he wants to share. And I know Mr. Linney has, and our ghost man himself there, the ghoul in top corner, Les.
Yeah,
Uncle Fester.
Uncle Fester,
So-
thank you.
so,
Yeah,
Dad.
I'll take
Yeah.
that name with pride. Yeah,
You take it with pride. So let's just have a look what we've got in chat here. We've got Steve Moore, Jack Hills. Let's have a look. Carol Pointer, Karen Behrman, Steve Tees, Bobby Dazzler, Mark Rhodes. Spoke to your sister last week. Let's have a look. So obviously it's Lillian, Vladimir, Dragonborn, Jojo, Paul Glover. Yeah. Oh, Jane's in. Yeah. Good to see you, Jane. And then let's have a look. John Alexander, Enigma, Rachel Gold. So happy Halloween, everybody. So
Yeah,
I think we're going to have to just kind of kick it off with just us people in there. And we put you on spot, Alinson, and I don't know if you've got any kind of ghostly tales to tell, have you?
I don't know if I think. Go on.
Oh, yeah, well, that's what we've got to do.
Yeah, we're going to think of one, aren't we?
Well, I was happy to say that I weren't bothered if I didn't speak about anything, but I'll kick it off then and see what people think to this. So it's a ghost dog, and I think Ian and Les and Alison briefly know outline of it, and it jumps back to 1996. So we jump straight into it, shall we?
yeah.
And this then young boy used to visit Bridlington on a holiday with his mum and his dad. Throughout the summer holidays, they'd got a caravan in Bridlington, a second-hand caravan. Now, why am I saying that? Because it's important. It might have some bearing on what happened. And it's not a long story. So what had happened, he'd been playing, summer holidays, been playing with his friends around caravan site, having a great time. And so it's obviously daytime, lovely sunny day. Comes home because he's hungry. That's usually what brings all young kids home, isn't it? Opens caravan door, or tries to, it's locked. Well, my dad's car's outside at caravan, so he knows they're not very far away. So he runs round to front at caravan's a big bay window. So that peers into it as a look. See, check they are inside. There's a little gas fire to right-hand side in middle of caravan. And he can see a dog. But it's just a dark grey stroke black outline of a Yorkshire Terrier. But it's there. Not transparent, but it's not all solid. And he's looking at it. He's puzzled as anything. He says, and this dog's locked eyes with him. He knew it had seen him. And his analogy, it's a bit like when two dogs first see each other. Yeah, like that one. A bit like when two dogs first see each other and they kind of go rigid, don't they? This dog's looking at him and can't believe what he's looking at. And the next thing he knows, it's not ran across the caravan floor and jumped onto those little seats that you know what I mean, that go around caravan. It's just there, as though it's teleported. He said it just didn't move. 1 minute it's there, then it's at window, and it's right in his face, backing its head off. But they're into sound coming from its mouth. He says, and it shocked him that much that he jumped backwards in fear and ran away. So that's the ghost dog story. And not a long one, what it? We've not even covered 3 minutes. So, so we've a long way to go. So any thoughts on that, people? We know that questions might be sort of tight tonight. We've got Nick Kyle on as well. So bring him in, Les.
Yeah, he's come on twice for some reason.
It doesn't matter, just bring one in.
Yeah.
Hi, Nick.
Hello,
you all right?
Nick.
Hi. I'm using my wife's computer, so she'll join us in a few seconds.
That's brilliant, that, Nick.
Brilliant.
And thank you. And hi, Sarah.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. So you already know Les, and we've got Alison, who's dressed for the occasion, and we've got Ian
Hi.
Linney in bottom right. So off we go. So you've not missed anything great. I've just told a story of a ghost dog. And anybody besides Nick and Sarah, because I haven't heard that, got any thoughts on that?
It was maybe someone's, because you said it was a second-hand caravan, didn't you?
Yeah.
So I mean that dog could have spent, quite a bit of time in there, and obviously it's passed on and still likes it. God knows.
Do you know what I find fascinating though? I mean, and I'm sure that probably Nick's going to have an opinion on this, but that ghost, this dog, it were totally aware of him. I used to kind of think about ghosts as some kind of almost tracing of the past that just travelled through a room and wasn't aware of anybody, but that's not the case, or it weren't the case with this ghost dog. But to be barking at him and no sound coming out of its mouth, I thought, absolutely fascinating. Any views, Les?
Yeah, do you think there's as many ghost stories involving not just dogs but all animals as much as there are humans? Do you think?
I think there's got to be. I mean, I don't know. What's your views, Nick? Why we don't see them as much, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, spiritualists believe that animals have a different sort of experience. They go to a group soul concept, and they only come back where there's a strong emotional bond. My own experience is I focus on people, and therefore I get deceased people. And only occasionally non-human kind of entities. So it's no surprise to me that I get more people, because that's what I'm looking for and that's what I expect. But I knew you were probably going to mention the ghost of the dog, because we've had a similar experience with ghost pets arriving and nudging and the dog wagging its tail and cats jumping the bed the way they used to do when they were with us in the normal sense.
And did you? And when this cat or dog jumped on bed, because we know our own animals, don't we? Did you actually know? Did you get that sense of feeling that's, I don't know, whatever name this animal was? You knew that, did you? You don't think it were a trickster or something else making you think that?
Well, that's a more searching question, isn't it? Are the people that you think are communicating, or the pets, are they who they appear to be? And I think quite often the answer is no. But proving for each individual case, I'm not so sure how you would do that.
No, okay, thank you.
But yeah, when the bed goes down, the duvet goes down, and you feel the weight of a cat, and that's what you've been used to for years, you just assume it's the cat.
Yeah. And I know that you're more in tune with things of a spiritual nature than I am, Nick. So, and I'll ask everybody, Alison, Linney, Sarah, why has it got a physical presence? Why has it got weight to it when it just seems to lack any kind of substance, as in visually?
Well, we have a strong interest in physical mediumship, so we are used to physical effects. The idea that because people or animals are in the spirit world, and I'm not sure that's a good term to use, it's a bit outdated really, but because they're in another dimension of existence, doesn't mean to say they can't step back into this one and be seen and touched and heard and felt. I mean, Sarah and I can tell you first-hand accounts where we've shook hands with spirit people and hugged them. Sometimes you shake hands and you feel up the arm and there's no body attached. And this is, I don't tell stories of witnesses. So everything I'm saying has been, can be verified with witnesses.
Would you like to, you touched on that when we were on before, but would you like to share some of that with us for 2 or 3 minutes, Nick? And then we'll go to Ian and we'll just see how this plays out. And or Alex.
I'm referring to a number of seances, particularly the Scroll experiments that took place in the late 1990s in the cellar of a country house in the village of Scroll, which is near Dis in Norfolk. The Scroll experiments have been well written up and researched and are popular. And there's a DVD out there and a couple of books by Ruth and Grant Solomon. So I won't linger in the details unless you ask me to. What I'll focus on is your question, which is physical effects from discarnate entities or deceased persons. Yeah, we went to only 2 sittings of 30 odd that were held for invited researchers and scientists. And in both occasions, we went as experienced circle sitters, experienced in traditional seance phenomena. And I don't like the expression, but it does fit. We were blown away by what we experienced. And just focusing on the physical bit of it, yes, I had light phenomena that I trapped in my hands with permission, and I could feel the physicality of the orb bouncing about in the palms of my hands, light shining out between my fingers, and I turned it just in case there was any chance of a wire or a nylon filament, like fishing line or something. I saw lots of things materialize, dematerialize, move in the air with no one touching them. But I think I'll turn to Sarah, because her story is even more personal and involving, engaging.
You know, as one of the 14 sitters, or the 10 sitters, and the 4 key people there, I was placed in what I now know to have been a hot seat. Had no idea what was going on, apart from being really excited. So forgive me, Paul, if you've heard this before. And basically, the lights, the energy lights that Nick has just described, were moving rapidly around the room, around chairs, etc. And your rational mind tells you this doesn't seem real, except you can't explain it. So they would rush up to people's faces and illuminate faces very clearly. But in my case, when they rushed towards me, they rushed towards my midriff, and I could see, and suddenly it disappeared. And inside my midriff, there was what I can only describe like a scraping, like fingers scraping down something. And I was completely shocked, absolutely. I kept saying and people said, it's disappeared, it's into her. And then there was a pop, and it came back out again. And that feeling of being scratched inside disappeared.
Did you feel any physical effects afterwards? Like any injuries? No.
Absolutely, and no marks, nothing, apart from the fact, will anyone believe me? Because it's quite surreal. Will anyone believe me? Apart from the other 9 people who were visitors.
Yeah.
And one of the men that materialized in the room, of the 2 that I saw, stood in front of Sarah, took her by the hand, and you want to complete that?
Well, yes, you could see the outline, the shape, you know, that sort of misty way things are. And would you like to shake hands? They were having lots of general chit chat with me. And he said, right. So I shook hands, and your rational mind says, is this rubbery or whatever? I just felt like a normal human being, the skin, everything. Why don't you just check up my arm?
Sarah, sorry for butting in, but was this audible, or was it? Were you hearing these?
Oh no, it was audible. Everybody knew what was going on.
Yeah.
And there were slight conversations. Yes, everybody knew what was going on. And so I shook the hands and then proceeded to go up this person's arm. I got to the elbow and there was nothing. My hand went straight through it. Yeah, I could see a person, the outline, the shape and all of that, but there was nothing. So I squealed, which made everyone laugh. And this person just laughed and said, "That shook you, didn't it?" Which was there. And again, it has happened to you, but you think, who's going to believe me?
Yeah.
One of the things, Paul, that I would want to stress is that the phenomena is physical, and the phenomena usurps the known laws of physics. And one example would be Sarah levitating in the room. It was a partial levitation. It was two legs of a four-legged chair lifting off the ground. She was trying to rock the chair back onto the ground, and it wasn't moving. And just as a footnote, in case people think something must have confused you and that you've been tricked. These phenomena have been seen in European countries with the group when they visited. NASA attended an American demonstration. It happened in Spain and Ibiza, in various locations. So lots of people have been tricked, and it wasn't tied to the brick cellar. And the last thing I would say is, up in Scotland, after 10 years of experimentation, Sarah and I have attended seances with other spectacular physical phenomena, such as a table spinning in the air and going into the ceiling and not damaging it, or objects shooting past my head into the wall. Again, no damage was done, but they don't always come back, which I think is interesting.
It's fascinating. Thank you. Anybody?
Can I just come in here? Just a little technical thing. Nick and Sarah, I don't know if you can angle your camera a little bit further down, because we're missing the... That's a little bit better.
That's brilliant. And we've got Tony's just arrived on.
Tony, yeah, we're going to bring Tony on as well, and welcome Tony to the show. Now, I know he's on his mobile phone because he's had difficulties with his laptop. So, hello and welcome, Tony.
Hi, Sorry about that, Les.
No worries.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Tony. Good to see you.
I'm back on the laptop now. It's my fault again.
Don't worry about it. All we're going to do, as you know, Tony, is just share a few ghostly tales and strange and unusual tonight. And we've got Nick and Sarah, and we've got Alison, who's dressed for the occasion. We've got Ian, or Linny, should we say, sat here. So we've all got a little bit to share. So where do you want to go with this next? Ian, do you want to share anything?
I've just got my grandkids just popping in the doorway a minute. Just give me a minute.
We'll see you in a minute. So we'll jump to Tony. Yeah. So, Tony, what are you going to share with us?
Well, I wanted to tell you about the my ghost sighting in my road. Okay. I'm saying it's a ghost because there's no other logical explanation for what I saw. Although I do believe what I saw was a replay. Right, let's start from the beginning. My road roughly runs east-west. And down near the eastern end of my road, we have a railway line that runs north-south. And we've got a small humpback railway bridge over the line. And people in Portsmouth know that if you were to drive over it at 30 plus miles an hour, you can get two wheels that leave the road. So everybody will try and speed over it. I mean, the kids love it if they're in the back because you get to, Duke's a hazard job. Anyway, so I was taxi driving at the time. This is 2002. Unfortunately, I didn't get the date, and it's really bugged me ever since. But I knew it was the end of the year. Anyway, so I was taxi driving. I'd finished my shift. It was about 12:30, midnight. I there's a roundabout down the eastern end of my road. As I was just turning around the roundabout to go in to enter my road, I saw a car in front of me, and it was a sporty car, a boy racer type car. I won't say what one, because in case anybody gets in touch with me in the future. And it accelerated. There's a run up of about 60, 70 yards. And the bridge on the eastern side has got a slope, quite a long slope going up to it. Whereas on my side of the road, on the western side, the road's higher, so there's hardly any slope going up to it on that side. Anyway, so this car's gone accelerating right up to the bridge. He must have been doing at least 40 plus. And then when he's got to the bottom of the bridge, I've seen the car head brake lights come on. And he's gone from about 40 down to 4 miles an hour. And then he's going up the bridge at a very, like a snail crawl pace, really slowly. And I thought, what are they doing? And I've quickly caught them up. And then when I've got caught up to like the bottom of the bridge myself, I've then seen someone standing on the left-hand side of the bridge. Now then, that was the road. There wasn't a pavement there. There was only a tiny bit of pavement on the right-hand side, on the sort of the northern end of the bridge. And I thought, my God, what is he doing standing there? As they've gone past him, because I'm looking up at an angle, I can see that there's two people in the car, the silhouettes of the passenger in the front seat and the driver. I've seen the passenger look. They've obviously seen this man. The passengers looked at him, and then I've seen the driver put his head down to the left so he could see him, because they were right next to this bloke as they went past. So I'm now myself. Well, anyway, as soon as the driver looked at him, they then shot down the road at like a phenomenal pace. They've just like gone. He's like looked at him and they've gone. So there was no cars coming. So I thought, right, because I don't know what this man's going to do. So I moved over to the right-hand lane to give him a wide berth. And I've gone past him extremely slowly, like at a crawl pace. And as I was going up, I was looking at him. He was wearing a black Crombie coat. Do you remember the Crombie coats down to about your knees, what the skinheads wore back in the day? And he had white drain pipe jeans, I could see. I couldn't see his feet, or didn't notice his feet or his shoes. But yeah, because I was thinking, oh, black Crombie and white. And I mean, when I say drain pipe, I mean completely straight white jeans. So he's dressed like a sort of skinhead scar type clothing. And then as I'm passing him, I've looked at his face. He looked like a normal person. And then when I've passed him and looked at his face didn't look right. I won't go into detail, but let's just say it was ash and grey and it wasn't all there. And I instantly thought, oh my God, don't tell me I'm looking at something paranormal, because until then he looked like a normal person. Because I hadn't really looked at his face, I was just looking at the body as I was going past. And I've instantly thought, like you were saying before, Paul, about people when they see something unusual and they won't accept it. And I've got a follow-up for this in a minute as well. Anyway, so I'm thinking, no, there's got to be a rational explanation. And I've gone down the road about 10 yards, and I thought, I'm watching him the whole time in my rear view mirror now. And I stopped. I thought, there's got to be an explanation. And for some reason, I was thinking, if I see him walk across the road, it'd mean he's real. But anyway, so I'm thinking, oh, please move, please move. It must have been quite a long time, maybe a minute. And then he started walking across the road, but not straight across, an angle towards me. And with that, he must have taken a few steps. And then what I noticed was all of a sudden, he had a glow around his head and shoulders. He still looked solid, but like with a glow on his head and shoulders. And he went across the road a bit further. And then the only way I can describe it is like his whole body, the shape, went like a You know when you get the white noise on your TV, the really fuzzy white picture?
Yeah,
It was like that, like some sort of hologram, but in the person's shape. And then by now he was like nearly over to the other side of the pavement, and then in an instant he disappeared from the bottom up. Definitely the bottom up. He sort of went zonk like someone had flicked a switch, and he was gone. That's exactly what I saw, and I just sat there. I mean, I couldn't take in what I was seeing. I live about 50 yards further down the road, so I've driven down and sat outside in my car for a while, trying to take in what I'd seen. Then I came in and I sat down in our living room, and I just after a while I said to my wife, "I think I've just seen a ghost," and told my wife, and she can verify that when she's in the house. But that was what I saw. But the man looked totally solid. Even after I looked at it was just his face that made me realise there was something dodgy about him, and that it could have been paranormal. And then I'm so glad I stopped, Paul, because if I hadn't done, I'd have been forever thinking, did I really? Was that someone just wearing a mask or trying to frighten people? You would have all these different thoughts going through your head, but actually stopping and seeing him disappear, and for all the world, it looked like a replay because he sort of went like a hologram and then disappeared.
You've ruled all that out,
to a hologram.
Tony, haven't you? You've ruled all that out. Any views on that, Linny, Nick?
No, I think I completely believe Tony at face value, and I think that was almost certainly a genuine encounter. I was just about to put into the chat a good book to read on this very subject, which is Paranormal Encounters on Britain's Roads by Dr. Peter.
Well, I know if you know. Pete, I've got it. I've read through it. Yeah,
we've had
Dr.
Peter on here a couple of times.
I've got it. Because Paul's had him on, haven't you, Paul?
Yeah, twice we've had Peter on. So I know you've.
Yeah, it's good because he goes into all the.
I know you've got a follow up for that, Tony. But
can I give you a follow up on it?
Well, shall we have a follow up in a moment, and we'll just jump to Ian, and just sort of go around people. Is that okay? Are you okay with that, Nick?
Oh yeah.
All good. So I know Ian's got a few interesting ghostly tales that he can share with us. So
fire
away, Ian.
I mean, I think what I'll start off with is it's one that I experienced, my wife experienced, both my daughters experienced, at least two of their friends, and possibly another four more. It was actually the day my daughter's 13th birthday. It was a Monday. The day before, on the Sunday, we'd had a party for it at our house. Loads of balloons, all the rest of it, loads of kids, everything. Then when the Monday came, used to get a crowd of kids had come round and they'd all walked to school together. Anyway, we was all stood there in the hallway. There was some balloons in the back room, which was the dining room. And all the doors was open downstairs. And one single balloon with a little bit of ribbon underneath it came out the kitchen, through the kitchen into the hallway. So we all stopped and we're just looking at it. And then it slowly went up the stairs. It stayed at the same height, about 3 foot off the ground all the time. Went into the bathroom, came out the bathroom, went into the back bedroom. We're all on the stairs watching this by this time. And it starts going along to the front of the house, which is my youngest daughter's bedroom. And she said quite out loud and quite scared, I hope it don't go in my room. It just stopped it stopped. Then it went into the front bedroom, which is mine and my wife's. It came back out the bedroom, along the landing, down the stairs, stayed at the bottom of the stairs, and then it went back up the stairs, round the banister, then straight into my daughter's bedroom where she said she didn't want it going in. It then came back out the bedroom, down the stairs, through the kitchen, into the dining room, and just stuck onto the ceiling where the rest of the balloons was. And it took quite a few minutes for this to happen. And we just stood there, and the kids are asking, "What was that? What was that?" I'm just saying, "It was just draft. It was this. It was that." And then when they're all gone, me and my wife was like looking at it. My wife was pretty scared about it, saying, "What the bloody hell was that?" type of words. I haven't got a clue, but it just seemed controlled all the time. It was controlled. And then years later, we saw Chloe, one of the girls that was there, was in a restaurant, and she was behind the bar. And one of the first things she said to us, she says, "I still talk about that balloon at your house. So it still freaks me out." And another girl, Lilia, she said the same. So whether there was any others there, because there used to be a right crowd of them, I don't know, there could have been, but there was at least 6 of us. And then I've often thought about it all. I mean, Beth was 11 then, and Amy was 13, so they're all young girls. And I've heard people say about energy building up in young girls for that type of thing to happen. It was just so bloody odd, and it's not the only thing that's gone on that we've felt and experienced in here, but just seemed so controlled and steady away. It didn't go up and down, similar height all the way up the stairs and around it when it was.
Yeah.
So odd and so definite where it was going.
It is a strange one, that, isn't it? Absolutely. Anybody got any views on that? Is that a ghost? I know we'll never know. I think I could. Are you playing our voices through your phone there, Tony?
Oh yeah, I am. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, I am, Paul. Sorry, I've turned it off.
Yeah, I've got a question. It's coming for Tony's account, and I'll put it on the screen. Tony, I don't know if you can see that from Rachel Martel. Is there any history of a man being hit on that bridge?
No, I didn't know of a history of jumpers there, but less than about half a mile up the track north of my bridge, there's another larger bridge. And there, I knew of people that jumped off of that because unfortunately, I knew someone vaguely that had jumped off of there and killed themselves.
Okay.
But I knew about that bridge, but I didn't know there had been any on R1. And now, a year after my sighting, they put a metal walkway, like a cage, on one side of it to make it safer, because it wouldn't have been very safe for people to walk over that bridge. There's barely enough space for 2 vehicles side by side, and there was just a tiny little pavement on one side. But no, the bridge, and actually, I found out from a railway worker that the railway line that goes further up, you've got the bridge where people have jumped off, and there's a small railway halt about a mile further up, and I know people have died there by accident, like kids playing on the line, and people have jumped in front of trains there, because not all of them stop there. They normally go straight through that halt. So there's been some spooky stuff seen up there.
Do you think? I'm just throw this out to all of you and people in chat. Do you think there's more chance of seeing or experience a ghostly type experience if there's been trauma involved with the deceased person?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's trauma. Well, they believe if you believe in the stone tape theory, they believe that the trauma and the energy is saved in the bricks and the ground. Yeah. That's why you see. Honestly, I would bet £100 that what I saw was some sort of a replay, because the man he was just staring straight up the line. He was on the southern bit of the bridge, staring across the road up the northern end.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
And
what we're going to do?
The follow up I got. Can I read you the follow up, Paul? Because it's quite important.
Go on then, but I want to follow up on Linny's balloon because I'm fascinated by this balloon.
You've gone.
Go on, Tony.
Go on, Tony.
Oh, go on. Do that one first, and then I'll come back.
Well,
All
no,
right, yeah, just before you go any further, then I just want to bring this question up from Karen. I'll put this on the screen, and I guess it's for everybody. Karen is asking, have you had any accounts of revolving black ball-like orbs?
Yeah. I'll put my hand up here. Yeah, definitely. Cliff tops at Bempton. Yeah, Ian. We both have together, including Pete, who will be sat in chat, watching but not contributing. Hope you're okay, Pete. And yeah, we've had that on the cliff tops. Early this year, weren't it?
The one that was against the edge row.
Yeah,
it was just December.
December.
The 22nd, 23rd of December.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So I mean, we can touch on that one if we get round to it. But yeah, we've had that. Anybody else had any experience of that? No. Alison, no.
I can tell you something. What I don't know why I haven't thought.
I've only seen a ball of fire in the sky.
Yep. Hold on. Let's pull Alison in because she's just got something grisly to tell us.
So at work, we've had something going on for a while. It started off with, you know how you just see black at the corner of your eye. Now and again, you'd see that and you'd think somebody were there. Then you'd hear somebody whistling a tune, or somebody, even children. We've even heard children laughing and giggling. And there's no children allowed in there. We've heard Eileen's had her name called out. You've sat there and the lights have either gone on and off. Doors have slammed. A door slammed shut when you couldn't. I went outside to take the bins out and I came back in and it's a heavy fire door. So you've got to physically slam it like that to shut it. It shut. It shut on me on its own. No wind, no nothing. In fact, Nick and Sarah, I hope you listen to me. You can give me some answers on this. And then, like I say, we've had lights going on and off. And then this one day, me and Amanda, I mean, it was broad daylight in the middle of the day. So it was just about a full operation. It were a white mist just went, but you could see its physical body. I don't know if it were a man or a woman. It just went out to corners, and we both saw it at the same time. And then, I mean, this has happened over the space of a few months. And then you'd hear banging, and you go and look where it were, like pans rattling. And this one day, you have to walk through to another room, to a spot room. This one day, I heard a pan go on the floor. And the pan is about this big. And I walked round and the pan was on the floor, upside down. I thought, how did that fall from there to there? We don't know. Anyway, when you were stood talking about it and somebody said, oh, about this ghost, I said, yeah, well, it's not very nice because it's getting violent now. It's throwing pans. And half an hour later, Amanda walked through and she was going, she couldn't speak to Alison, look. So I walked round to where the pot wash were, and there was a knife physically embedded in the floor. Oh, a knife about this big. I'm gonna go about this big. A peeling knife, a little peeling knife. Physically embedded, but it was straight in the floor. Now the floor is concrete. So then, a week later, the two will work at night time, Zolt and Eileen. I was working with Zolt a couple of nights later, and he says, I need to tell you this. He says, me and Eileen were talking about the ghost to somebody. He says, and I felt this pain in my arm. He says, and 3 scratch marks appeared like this on my arm, and it were a physical pain. He said they were there for a few seconds. He says, he did take a quick photo of it, and it were. I mean, I'm not even making marks on my arm 3 like that, but it were. And he says, within 15, 20 seconds it had gone. He says, but there were physical pain.
Yeah.
And that's how far it's gone.
How recent is this, Alison?
Last week.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is when I said, you stop. You need to stop. So I really don't know what is happening, whether there's what our building was on. I've no idea. It's just like come from nowhere, this energy. This naughty energy. It's not very nice, really, is it?
No. Any views on that? Anybody?
Strange.
I think if it was me, Alison, I would be trying to investigate what's going on, not in an attempt to rationalize and explain it away, but in an attempt to be protective and try and make sure that it goes away.
Yeah. That's why I said I asked it to stop. Stop now. This is going too far.
Yeah.
But obviously, without scratching it wasn't very nice. It's not very nice, that, is it?
What a simple explanation that accepts spirit communication is that there's a nasty character, maybe a mischievous character, trying to get your attention, and when it's not worked, they decide it'd be fun to scare you. But you don't want it to go as far as that, because maybe the next time the knife will be embedded in something else.
Yeah. Good point. Just before you move to a question, Les,
there's plenty of cases where people have had marks.
Yep. Okay. I want to go to this balloon. I've got to go to this balloon. I just want to. It's just fascinating me. I want to know what.
Can I just bring one question in related to the balloon from?
Well, I might get it out eventually. Then go on.
Okay. So the question is from Enigma. Was there a string attached to the balloon, and did it remain vertical in motion? Ian?
Yeah. The little bit of lace type of thing was underneath on the knot. It was just only a short piece. And it all stayed in the same position. It wasn't wobbling about. It was all very controlled. Very controlled.
Because I was going to say, what did you think, Ian, after all these years now looking at it, looking back at what you've just told us? Do you think there was something within the balloon itself creating that movement, or do you believe, a bit fanciful really, that there's a ghost carrying the balloon, moving the balloon?
Personally, yeah, I think so. There's been a lot of little bits and pieces that's happened. It was whether it was showing off, I don't know. I really don't know. But it was like a child was moving it along, but very, very gently, because it wasn't tugging on the string. It was just very, very, very. It was all so smooth.
Yeah.
It just literally come out the kitchen.
Oh no!
And it was like, well, everyone just stopped talking. I mean, I'd usually been at work, but because it was my daughter's 13th birthday that day, I'd stayed at home a little bit later than I usually would have gone to work. And I'm glad I did, really, because I know my phone would have been ringing. My wife she'd have been terrified. I mean, she don't really like us talking about it much now, because the more you seem to talk about things, then
the more it evokes.
Something else will happen.
Yeah. Well, before we get to Sarah, I know that Nick said Sarah's got some incredible ghostly tales that she can share with us. But let's hear Tony's follow-up account, because otherwise he's not going to let me ask anybody else. Come on then, Tony.
Yeah, Paul, can I just say about what Ian was talking about, the balloon?
Yeah.
I know there's a pub in the city where the landlord he moved into this pub and he kept having the alarms going off in the early hours of the morning. So he's then checked this. It was always around 6 o'clock. And he's then checked the CCTV, and he saw a balloon. It wasn't very high, on a string floating around the pub, and then there was some steps up to another level, and it even went up like a couple of steps, like a ghost child was carrying it around the pub. So there's that one. Yeah, they got that on CCTV apparently.
Okay.
And that's the green posts at Hilsey. That one. Right, the follow-up story.
Go on then.
Carry on. Go on. I've got a bit of a delay on this end, so carry on, people. What
Right
were you going
then.
to say?
Well, Nick's going to.
Yeah, I mean, I hesitate to call myself a spiritualist, but I've been in and around the movement for so long that I know that the spiritualists wouldn't find the story about the balloon surprising at all. And it's not just because they believe in the possibility of spirit communicators and visitors. It's because in some seances they put in toys and sweets and coloured paper and maybe balloons too, because spirit children still enjoy these kind of things. And of course, if they come into the energy created in the seance room, they like to play. It seems to me, Linny, that you've had a spirit child visiting. They've liked the balloons, they've taken one, and they've walked around the house, perhaps just to see what your house is like, but more likely because there's a party going on. And why would a spirit child lose the sense of fun from attending a party? So I don't have any problem in accepting that could easily have been a spirit visitor, maybe a child walking around with that balloon. The difficulty, I think, is evaluating it as evidence, because although it's really interesting that it seemed to retrace its steps and maybe respond to comments that were being made, of course a balloon is easy to manipulate. Simply people's breath could maybe do that. I don't think that's an explanation. I accept your view of things, but it would be really good to try and build on that attempt to get your attention and communicate if your wife wasn't so resistant to the idea.
It's a good explanation.
I do understand what you mean in that, and you're probably more versed in it, well, a lot more versed in it than I am. It was just so bizarre and controlled, to go up and down the stairs twice, and it went straight back in, and it went along the landing, straight into the bedroom where my youngest daughter had said, I hope it don't go in my room. And she was quite, she still don't like the idea of it, but it happened. We just wish that if it had been later on when everyone's got the phones, they could have, it's 17 years ago, they could have, filmed it. It'd have been unbelievable then. It's just...
There's a case in the Borders, the Scottish Borders. It's not in the public domain and it can't be published for legal reasons, but it involves, the gist of the story is spirit girl in a shop haunts it. And at one occasion, having had the shop locked all night, the staff came back to find it was full of balloons. And then they heard on the village grapevine that balloons for a party had been stolen from the village hall. So the explanation from the investigator was that this little spirit girl was envious of the fact that the balloons were in the village hall, so she grabbed them and brought them to her location where she had more fun and so on. So that you'll not hear that story anywhere else, but it's really interesting what children in the spirit world come back to enjoy. They come back to spend time, especially in families with young children. And can I just say one other thing? We were talking about trauma earlier, the trauma of a ghost meeting an untimely end and so on. Can I say to you that decades of investigations of cases by the Scottish Society for Psychical Research showed that trauma was one of the leading reasons for phenomena, but it's trauma in the clients. It's as if they've had the upset, and that releases energy that attracts the spirit world closer. So it's not just trauma from the alleged ghost. It could be trauma in the people perceiving the ghost. And I don't want to take away from Tony's footnote.
No. So it's all yours, Tony. Let's hear the second half of this.
Right. So I got a reply on that story, and it was from a chap, and he said about 30 years before, when he first started working, he worked with a lady called Gloria, and she came into work one morning and said to the people there, "Oh, you wouldn't believe what I saw yesterday," and then proceeded to tell them. She said she was cycling over the bridge, about to, and she saw a man that she thought was going to jump onto the railway line below. He had been starting to climb up on the wall. So she was cycling. She got off her bike and started walking towards him to talk to him. And at the same time, two other cars stopped. A man got out of one car and a couple, man and woman, got out the other. And as they were all sort of converging on this guy, he said that he climbed onto the wall and let me read this out. He climbed on top of the wall. He went transparent and faded away as he was about to jump. And he said, I'd forgotten all about this story until I read it. And he said this was just before Christmas 89 or 90. And he said that afterwards that the both the man and the woman that got out the car wouldn't accept what they had seen. They had just seen this bloke evaporate, or young man as she called him, and they were both trying to climb over the railings to go down the railway embankment, because they've all looked. You can look over the wall, but they've tried to get over climb the railings and get down the embankment to have a look to see if he was on the lines, and they've had to pull him back because they just weren't having any of it. And she said the other man then said, "Well, I'm going to phone the police." And then he said it was 2 or 3 days later in the local paper, in the news, it said something like mystery bridge jumper, and it was reported in there. So I want to go and look at the newspaper archives. So I'm going to try and look for sort of December 89, 90 and see if I can find it. Because that will give it more of a date when it happened. Because that could be a yearly event, once a year that happens. And,
interesting.
And the other thing is, it's right next to the prison wall. At that end, you've got an old Victorian prison, which now, a year ago, people moved in. The actual prison itself has been converted, but they've built flats all around it, brand new flats. And there's one right in that corner, and the top 4 or 5 floors look right onto the bridge. They're literally next to it. And I put on there about that, the people there will probably get a view. And a lady who lives in that block said, "Oh, I live there." And she said, "Oh, that's really fascinating." She said, "I will let the other people know about it that live up top, upstairs." And so hopefully we might get another sighting of it.
A bit more follow-up.
Right in line with
well,
so
that's good.
See that's something.
Good. So after sharing these stories, then
so you've got the prison on one side.
Go on then, Tony.
On the other side, the prison was supposed to be haunted, but on the other side of the road, there's an old Victorian workhouse where people live in there, and that's very haunted. I had the guy because that was converted about 15 years ago, something like that. And the guy that was a security guard there, he said that he had a dog with him, and he said his dog was fierce. It wasn't frightened of anything. And he said one day point blank refused to go in one of the doors. And then
Well, your internet connection's breaking up there, Tony.
I couldn't wait to get out.
Yeah.
Pardon?
Okay, right. Your
What's
internet
that?
connection's breaking up a little bit.
Is
Internet's
it
breaking up a bit there. So let's just jump to Nick and Sarah. And have you got any? But thanks for that, Tony, because we wanted that follow up. It kind of all tied in and made sense. But have you got any ghostly tales of your own that you want to share with us?
Can I chip in a story that relates to some of what's just been spoken about?
Okay, yeah.
On an SSPR case several years ago, I took with me the late Reverend Charles Morton, who was a known and ordained spiritualist minister. And he didn't know where we were going. He was used to not being told because it would compromise any clairvoyant evidence that he got. So I'm driving him in the kind of Glasgow area. And he turns to me and he says, "You realise, Nick, I don't need to come with you." And I said, "Well, you're kind of volunteering." He said, No, I don't mean that. He said, "I know the situation without having to leave my house." And I laughed. I thought the idea was almost ridiculous. And he said, No. He said, "I come with you for the company." He said, "And just to get out somewhere for the day." He said, "Because I'm spending too much time at home." As we're driving towards an address that he doesn't know about, he pointed to a skyscraper block of flats. He said, "That's where the young man jumped." We then arrived at the client's house, which was within line of sight of the skyscraper building he'd pointed to. And as we began to speak to the woman, she confirmed that she felt the presence of her son who had committed suicide. And of course, she pointed out the window and said he jumped from that block of flats.
Oh.
So it seems to me that when people do commit suicide or arrive in the spirit world in an untimely kind of way, that they can come back and register, not in a stone tape theory way, oblivious to people, but communicate quite consciously to certain individuals, such as the Reverend Morton, a message that they want to pass on. And the trauma helps them, the emotion helps. And the mother was picking up quite rightly the emotion of her son. But isn't it interesting to think that mediums and psychics and so on might not need to leave the house to investigate cases? They can tell you without going out. So that was just something about trauma and about suicide and so on that I thought linked to those other stories. I'll get out of the way now and let Sarah tell one or two Irish stories.
No, I'm going to tell the group what happened in this house about 10 years ago.
All right.
Sitting in our living room, which is about 30 foot long, a living room come dining room. Nick wasn't in that evening. And watching TV, and out of the side, just like Alison was saying, there's something at the side there. And out of the side of my eye, there was a movement. And from the dining room end, walking towards me was a a little figure under 5 feet, a little old lady. I didn't recognize this old lady. And I'm saying out loud, "Is there something wrong?" And her response was, "I'm very worried. I'm really worried about Margaret." And she was there maybe, I don't know, half a minute, and just kept saying, "I'm really worried about Margaret." And I asked her name and she said she was Elizabeth. So I'm thinking, I have an aunt who's called Margaret. Nick's mother is called Margaret. But I'm thinking I couldn't place this lady at all. Absolutely. And so she then kind of faded away again. And part of me thinks, why wasn't I scared? But there was nothing to be frightened about at all. So Nick comes in, we discuss it, and he said, "Well, we can't just phone these people and ask them, 'Are you okay?' But About 3 or 4 days later, one of my close friends phoned and said, I've got really bad news about my sister. Her sister, whom I knew as Mags, had ovarian cancer. And as the story began to unwind, because I didn't tell my friend immediately all of this here, my friend's grandmother was called Elizabeth. And the lady I described, my friend was quite shocked and said, but that's a description of my granny, my party granny.
Right.
So it transpires, in fact, that I had assumed all along that Mags was this girl's name, because I don't think anyone had ever heard her called Margaret. And within 6 weeks, she, in fact, had passed. But the story gets a little stranger. We went along to the funeral, which happened to be in Dublin, and a lovely funeral, if you can call funerals such a thing. But my friend who was living down south came up to see me because she was very unhappy at losing her sister. And she wondered if there was any way we could possibly link in with her sister, if her sister was willing to do so. So one evening in June, Nick arrives home from a meeting. And what happens, Nick?
Do you want to continue telling the story?
No, you carry on.
Okay, so Sarah's friend, whom we'll call Sarah, she was there and she had travelled for 8 or 10 hours, and I was surprised to see her. And I said, "What are you doing here? You know, you're very welcome, but is there a reason?" And she said, "I'd like to know if you're a medium, if you can contact my sister." And I pointed out it's not like a telephone service, but given that she was so distressed and so keen, I would at least try. And no sooner had I sort of closed my eyes and tried to slip into an altered state than I was aware of a presence. I couldn't see the presence, although what I could see seemed to be like the hot air shimmering above a radiator, except there was no radiator there. And I telepathically said, "Is that you, Mags?" And to my great surprise, I got a clairaudient answer, "Yes." And I looked to see if Sarah, my wife, or her friend had heard the voice, and they hadn't. So it was a silent, a sort of psychic thing, if you like. So I said to Mags, "Do you know that your sister is here?" And she said, "Yes, that's why I'm here." Okay. And I turned to Sarah's friend and said, "What would you like to know? I might have your sister Mags with us." And she said 2 things. Is she happy? And is she in heaven? So I turned to the empty space and sent a thought. "Did you hear that?" "Yes." "What's your answer?" She said, "Well, I'm not in heaven. Or at least I don't think I am, but I'm in a very nice place. It's not perfect, but give me a few days, give me some time, and I'll see what I can do." And when I relayed this to Sarah's friend, she burst out laughing. She said she was a troubleshooter for a national business. She would be sent into a branch to turn it around or close it within a fortnight. This is her having a little joke that she can do the same on the other side. And I thought, yeah, well, maybe we're making too much of a story out of it. And I said, and the other question was, "Are you happy?" And she said, "Oh, yes." She said there was a group on the other side, a reception committee, and there was laughs and hugs and kisses and memories shared. And it was really nice to feel so welcome by people that I knew when I lived my life. And that was fine. So I turned to Sarah's friend and said, is that okay if we leave it at that? Because I'm not confident in extended conversations like that. And Sarah's friend said, "Nick, I know you wouldn't deliberately lie to me, but how do we know it's Mags? How do we know it's not, as Paul alluded at the start of this meeting tonight, how do we know it's not somebody pretending?"
Yeah.
So I turned to the empty space, and telepathically said, "Did you hear that?" "Yes." And that's how she said it. And I said, "So what's your answer? Where's the proof that it's you?" And this is how she spoke to me, like a silly, slow child. "I have told you that on the other side, there was a reception committee and we all had a laugh," she said. "And I made them laugh because I said, I've got bright red high heel shoes on. Is it okay to wear these here?" And a guy with an English accent stepped forward, whom she knew, and said, "Well, you can if you want, love, but nobody's going to hear you coming." And they all had a little titter. And I looked at Sarah's friend, and the tears are running down her cheeks. She said, "I was present when the coffin lid was screwed down, and I placed a pair of bright red high heels on my sister's feet that she had just purchased recently but never got the chance to wear. Car to bar shoes is what she called them." She said, "And I made the undertaker promise, and the one other family member that was there promise, never to say that in case other members of the wider family disapproved." She said, "So nobody knows, except, of course, me, the undertaker, the one family member sworn to secrecy, and Mags."
Thank you. That's a great
So
story.
I think that's really interesting. Now, Mags has been back.
Oh, yes.
She's been back to comment on the memorial service that was held for her, and how certain people in the family weren't invited because they'd fallen out with the stress and strain of it all. And Mags showed that since her death, she knew about continuing events and family tensions because she was around. And she was letting Sarah's friend know that she approved of the decisions that had been made on her behalf, planting a tree and so on.
Thank you, Nick.
Yeah,
and I can see that we've got another two.
Yeah, we're going to bring two more guests in, and let's welcome Dave Hodrean. Welcome, Dave.
Hi,
oh,
Dave.
Wow. Wow, great.
Looking well, Dave.
Hello. I'll take that on. Happy Halloween, all. How you all doing?
Happy Halloween, mate, and good to see you.
And at the same time, we're going to welcome Mr. Paul Bestel. Welcome, Paul.
Hi, Paul. You all right?
Hello there. Yeah, I was wearing a mask, but it didn't. My earphones won't go around my head, so I had to take it off.
You need these ones.
Right, I'll see you a bit later.
Oh, great stuff. Well, I think, obviously, everybody's just about told one story here, one strange, spooky story. So we've got to jump in with David or Paul, and let's kick it off. And do you want to share one with us? Before we go into that, everybody knows that David were on last week and sharing his UFO cases and research with us. And Paul Bestel, Mysteries and Monsters podcast. Always good to listen to you, Paul. And thanks for giving us a little bit of your time.
No, thanks for the invite. Delighted to join you all, and great fun as always for everybody.
Well, you know, Alison, we've got Tony Worrall, we've got Nick and Sarah Kyle, we've got Linny, who was always on Cliff Tops with me. I think you met Linny anyway.
Yes.
I'm sure you have, yeah. So, one of you two, let's kick it off. What are you going to share with us?
Who do you want to go first? Paul, do you want to?
Well, you're talking. Let's do it.
Yeah, no problems. Ironically, a couple of weeks ago, Paul, I got an email from a listener who had heard my episode with Dr. David Clark talking about the Stocksbridge bypass and the spectral figures that I've seen on there over the last sort of 30 or 40 years. And he just said he was absolutely shaken because he wasn't aware that the road had this haunted reputation. And would I be interested in hearing something that happened to him sort of 7 years before the full bypass was opened? So I said, yeah, absolutely. And so obviously the bypass was built to replace the A61 and kind of take the traffic, because that road's a really busy road running from sort of Sheffield to Manchester over the Pennines. And so the old road used to take everybody through Stocksbridge. So it was just like a traffic nightmare. But when you get through the Stocksbridge, you come out to the end of the peaks and it leads into the Pennines. And they were driving along there one particular night. It's quite a lonely road when you're driving along it late at night. And they were sort of coming over the brow of the hill as you come out of Stocksbridge and sort of dip down. And as they kind of dipped down, they saw this figure at the bottom of the hill. just sort of stood at the side of the road that they were on. And as they started getting closer to it, they said it seemed to start shaking, like it was vibrating. So at first they thought, well, is this a tree branch that's shaking it? Because it wasn't quite clear, because they were about, I don't know, 200, 300 feet away from it. But as they got closer, it started to sort of solidify and become more distinct and sharper and sharper. And as they got within about 20 yards of it, essentially it just sort of appeared as this tall black figure in a shroud. And as they drew level with it, it kind of turned its head and watched them go past. And they were all sort of staring at the car like that. And they went. And they just thought it was a really odd occurrence. There was 3 of them in the car. And then he'd kind of not thought anything about it for 42 years. And then he'd accidentally saw my podcast, listened to that, and he just blew him away, because then he realised he'd seen one of the earliest reported sightings in that area.
In the Stocksbridge bypass. And is it always figures that's seen on the bypass, or is animals seen? Is this the one where the Roman soldiers are seen? Is that the one?
No, it's a strange one.
Monk on it.
Yeah, yeah. It's like a monk or a hooded figure,
right?
And nobody's really sure, because it depends where you are. Because there are some sightings from nearer the village where it looks like it's walking in the modern road, so it's like up to its knees, sort of walking along. There was a very famous experience with a father and son who were training for the London Marathon, and they ran round a corner and basically saw this sort of hooded figure struggling along, but from the knees up, so its knees were on the sort of road surface. You couldn't see his shins or its feet. And so most people have these encounters of seeing what they perceive to be a monk or a hooded figure. But I mean, David Clarke was always, he's obviously a very well-known UFO researcher, and the guy that got the National Archives to release all the British UFO sightings 20 years ago. And so David always thought it was a little bit of one of those tall tales. But then he ended up interviewing 2 of his best friends, and they had a very famous sighting where they were driving along on a bright summer's day, and the wife of the driver saw this sort of shape in the field that run parallel with the new bypass, and they thought it was somebody running. And they thought, well, that's a bit strange, because they were all dressed in black. It's a beautiful sunny day. Why on earth would you be dressed like that? And they could kind of watch it from about 200, 300 yards away as it was running along the bottom of the field. And as they started to draw level with it, this shape, this figure kind of took a detour and started running towards them. And as they got level with where it was, it leapt out of the field, over the car bonnet, and onto the other side of the dual carriageway, and disappeared into the other field. And they basically nearly smashed the car up and just had to pull over, and they just couldn't understand it. And they said it was, like I say, bright summer's day. They were driving 30, 40 miles an hour, and this figure ran 300 yards, Paul, and jumped over a hedge, across the car bonnet, and onto the other side of the road.
And did they think that were ghostly? It sounds like there's a real physical presence to that.
Yeah, well, at first they were kind of confused, because, like I say, at first they thought it was perhaps somebody in black running, and then after that they thought, well, is it a big, because these days you'll see hay bales and they're all wrapped in that black tarpaulin to protect them and keep them dry. So they thought, well, has one of those got loose and been blown about? And then they were thinking, as it got quicker, they think, is it a dog? And we're just not seeing it right for some reason. But then as it went, it was just like this big, long, black shape. They couldn't really describe what it was, Paul. As strange as it was easier for them to sort of think it was something before it was right in front of them. Then it was just a sort of...
We kind of try to fit them into what we want them to be. Just before we get to David, because it's fascinating, David Clarke, what did he think then? Because you said his friends told him this, and he's a brilliant researcher, but he's known for his really critical thinking and nailing it down to wire. So what did he think after he'd heard that?
Well, as I say, it kind of confounded him, because David's a man of science and a man who likes, as you say, he's a very rational thinker. I mean, he is a very open-minded man. I think sometimes people dismiss him as an arch skeptic, but David's nothing of the sort. He's just he likes evidence and he likes facts, and he works on that principle. I mean, it's ended up that these days he's now the leading light in the British Folklore Society, and he's really pushing to bring folklore back. And he just said, I can't settle it because my rational brain tells me that it's just one of those things. And then I have two people who I trust implicitly that I've known for 20 years who tell me about this incredible sighting, and they can't explain it. I can't explain it. And therefore, it's unexplainable. That, you know, as you said, Paul, sometimes we try and frame these things into the reference points that we're aware of. But he says, I can't tell you what it is. I can just tell you we don't know what it was. And that was it.
So before we jump to David, and keep it brief, has anybody got any views on what Paul's just shared? Yes or no? No?
I mean, I've dealt with similar cases.
Yeah, but the Stocksbridge.
It's just, are you there? Where are you? Right.
Sorry, I've got a delay at my end, so I didn't know what was going on.
Yeah, well, go on then, Tony. Keep it brief because we want to get David in. Go on, Tony.
Yeah, the famous bit with the Stocksbridge bypass is when it was just before it opened, the two police officers, well, there were two workmen that saw something, and then the two police officers, and the Strange But True program back in the 90s with Michael Aspel, they showed the police officers seeing the monk, and then that one that you've just described, Paul, the man and woman seeing something running across the field, because they said its arms were swaying all over the place. It looked really weird. They showed that one as well. If I'd say to anyone who'd go on YouTube and watch Strange But True, and they've got a good bit on the Stockbridge bypass there. So
it was a great episode,
get them on YouTube, that whole show. Do you remember
that?
Strange But True.
Go on, Ian.
I think it threw stones at the police guard in it.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, David was very lucky because he was working for the Sheffield Star at the time.
Banged it as well.
Yeah. So David was actually the first reporter to interview the police officers, and I've got the original interview tape. He sent me a copy from 1987. So I've got that. So I've heard them literally the day after all that happened that was featured in the Strange But True episode. And they're clearly very shaken. Very shaken.
Not surprising.
Fascinating, isn't it? Okay, let's jump to David then. And I'm sure you've got something interesting to share with us, David.
Yeah. Just on that case of the stock with the thing leaping over the car, it reminds me of you could say a cryptid case that came my way a number of years ago. So most of the cases I investigate are UFO related, but occasionally I've dealt with cases where even Bigfoot cases and things like that. And there's this really weird one with these occurred in Cascade Springs in the States. And I have no idea why they got in touch with Birmingham UFO Group in the UK, whatever. I occasionally get calls in from around the world. And they reported these two, they think they were winged beings. They were running after the car, and they said that they leapt over the car and then sort of flew off into the darkness. It kind of started with a UFO sighting. They were sort of seeing strange lights through the trees, and they got this overwhelming sense that there was a presence with them, and they're out in the middle of nowhere in this campsite in the middle of the night. These were military witnesses, so served in the American forces, and they said after they left the campsite, they felt something was following them, looked behind them, and that's where they saw these two figures. You know, you've only got the testimonial evidence there, but it was a really bizarre case. It's the only case I've ever dealt with involving some kind of winged beings, and I mean, some people might say it's the Mothman or whatever. There's two of them, but Mothmen. The case report for that is on the Birmingham UFO Group website, so you can I can even send that your way, Paul, if you're interested in seeing more details.
Please do.
That's both Pauls, of course, Paul A and Paul B. You're literally called Paul B. So my story I wanted to share. So obviously my forte is UFOs, investigated UFOs last 16 years of my life actively, but I've always had an interest in the whole wider paranormal world, and I eventually had what you would consider ghost type experiences when I was at Plymouth University. So I was about 21 at the time, and I decided to move down to the south coast. So I'm usually living in Birmingham, of course, But I moved down the south coast just to kind of get really, really far away from where my folks lived, so they couldn't come round and just knock on the door randomly, just so we way out the way. And I moved around a number of different share houses, and this was the third share house that I've moved into. There were three other gents there and a girl, so quite a busy share house. And in the initial weeks when I moved in, there was some unusual activity, which most people would interpret as poltergeist type activity. There's three particular incidents I'm going to go through with you. Didn't start particularly impressive. Essentially, we had a living room with a little side kitchen on the end, and I'd just been doing the washing up. And above the sink, there was a shelf, and we'd put all the pint glasses along there. So I finished washing the glasses and put them up there. I'm pretty sure they were fully dried. Put them on the shelf, go through to the living room. A couple of seconds later, there's a thud noise. Go back into the kitchen, and one of the pint glasses is in the middle of the kitchen floor. This is weird, not only because it was dry, so there was no kind of suds for it to slide on, but even if it had slid off the shelf, because I'm trying to rationalize it, even if it had fallen off the shelf, it would have dropped down into the sink, and this thing was in the middle of the floor. It hadn't smashed or anything. It was just rolling around. But you don't think too much to it. You're just like, okay, whatever, push it back on there. I didn't interpret it as anything related with ghosts at all. It just happened. But the first more significant event happened about 1 or 2 weeks after that. It was all in quick succession, and I'm very certain that none of these involved my other housemates pranking me or anything like that. So most of them had gone out for the night, and there was me and a chap named Steve. We're sitting in the living room just watching telly, and it's deadly quiet. 3 of them had definitely gone out, so the house is empty apart from us. And all of a sudden, thud, 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 thud. Sounds like running footsteps running right across the roof of the lounge. It was so loud that you could pretty much feel it's making the hairs on the back of my neck stand up thinking about it. And it was so loud, and you could almost feel the ceiling vibrate. The noise was so intense, and straight away we're just freezing. I pause the TV, and it's just deadly silent. And Steve doesn't want to go up there. He's absolutely terrified to go upstairs. He's not moving out of his armchair. He's just there, and he's like, I'm not going up there. So in the end, I get up, and I'm just peeping around the lounge door, and the lights are on outside in the hall, and it's completely silent. And I'm like, what's going to, is there a burglar upstairs? I go up there, nothing. So no windows open, no burglar, nothing at all. Now, you could say, okay, it was echoes from next door, right? You sometimes get that from next door, don't you? Here's the thing. I lived in that house for about 9-10 months, and I only ever heard this only ever happened once. And you'd expect to hear echoes on other times if that was a thing, and it very definitely sounded like it was within the property. So it was really bizarre. So that wasn't, that was where I started to think that's weird. That's probably paranormal in nature. I couldn't rationalize it any other way. But the next incident that happened was even more impressive. It was kind of almost like it was building up. I don't know. We had on top of the television was a vase. It was a fake vase of fake flowers in, because they don't trust students to water actual flowers, right? So there's some of the TV, and again, it was me in the house, and one of the other housemates, also called Dave. Other 3 had gone out for the evening. We're sitting in there watching the lounge, and we go through from the lounge into the kitchen for no longer than about 8 or so seconds. When we pop back into the living room, the vase of flowers has jumped from the top of the television to in front of the television screen with the TV still on. It's upright. It's not fallen over. It's standing in front of the TV screen. And I'm just like, what? And I remember turning to Dave and saying, that's you, right? You did, and I was trying to rationalize it, but he's next to me in the kitchen, so it couldn't have been him. But I'm thinking, he's in on this. What's going on with this? And he's just like, and he didn't seem that bothered by it. Some people it'll just go over their head. Some people will kind of look into it and they'll be like, wow, that's fascinating. Something's happened there. And other people will just dismiss it. And you get the same thing with UFOs. People will just they'll see something incredible and they'll just put it down to, oh, it must have been a bird or whatever, even if they had a close encounter or something like that. And it's similar to that. He just kind of completely dismissed it. And I was like, isn't that weird that it's jumped down from there? And he didn't seem that bothered. So I just went back and picked it up, put it back on the top of the TV. And that was that. And it never happened again. And after that, all the activity quietened down. So it was just this period where and I was almost going to start writing a diary because I was expecting more stuff to happen. And I was like, right, jot this stuff down. But nothing ever happened after that. So Yeah, those are the experiences that happened in that one house down in Plymouth, and it was really fascinating to see something firsthand. I was a little bit spooked out by it, but I was more interested. I was like, wow, there's actually something going on here. I wonder what's going to happen next. Is this going to escalate? I'm going to start seeing apparitions, anything like that. Nothing like that happened, but it was still really interesting to actually have something of that nature happen to me directly.
I wonder if things are still happening there. It'd be fascinating to find out.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I'm going to ask Les if there's any questions. Just before he does, though, me and Linny know a house where there were a lot of activity, and I'm sure it's still happening. We don't need to say where house is, Ian, but this was before me and Linny even knew each other, and I'd been to the house, he'd been to the house, and it were active, weren't it?
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Yeah, it was weird. I mean, I got asked to go in there just to have a little bit of a poke about, and I'd literally gone straight from work to my friend's house. It's my friend's wife who says, "Will you come around?" Because lots of odd things coming in, and then you had, a bit receptive to odd things, let's say. So I went in. My eldest daughter wanted to come with me, so she went in with me. We had a walk about in this place, and in the main bedroom, I mean, the guy whose house it was, he was in the shower. So I went in the main bedroom and I was confronted. I couldn't see it, but I just knew there was a bloke stood in front of me, and I got it in my head asking me, "What the F am I doing in there?" And I was just like taken back by it. And I was just like, "It's all right, I'm just having a look. Don't worry about me." And it seemed to go back. Anyway, the guy come out. He come out with his bathrobe and whatever around him, and he was like, "Okay, then." So him and his wife mooched about, went into the bathroom, and there was a little kid stood in the bath with tight, curly blonde hair. And I could put my hand on top of its head and you could feel it. Nobody else could see it. I could see it. And then everyone started putting their hand in. Everyone could feel there was a drop in temperature. And I just got it straight back in my head. You pack it in now. I've had enough of it now. Like if you got curly hair, like what I've got. And people put their hair up. I just says, "Come on, let's just go." So we went out of there. And then I could feel tugging at the back of my trousers. And there was my work trousers and I'd ripped them. So like back of my ass was hanging out. And I could feel this tugging. And then I could hear him laughing. And then I felt in both hands, like a pair of children's hands in my hands, following me around. And then again, back of my trousers start tugging and giggling. And then when we got down to the bottom of the stairs, we stood there talking to this guy and his wife. And my daughter just tapped me and sort of like pointed across, and there was a big artificial plant there in the hallway, and just one of the branches on this plant was just going like that, just rocking. And then when everyone else noticed it, it stopped. And when we left there, my daughter nearly told me nearly everything that I already knew. She picked up on it. She said that branch was moving around for ages, and I knew there was still kids pulling that back of your trousers.
Yeah.
So.
So my two youngest daughters babysat for them, and the guy in question used to work with me, and that's how we found out about it. And Jess and Laura were in it, and they asked me to come up, and they said there's something happening. And obviously, I made the guy, but I'll not say his name, and his wife aware that that I knew, and they'd said we can hear the children running about upstairs, we can hear them giggling, and our Laura went down to seat at dog. A long kitchen, wasn't it? Real long back kitchen. Yeah. And she went down to seat at dog, and as she's looking at the dog and bent down, somebody spoke. A child spoke into Laura's ear. They were real strange. And I took a voice recorder, an analog voice recorder, and I put it on the stairs. And to this day, he still doesn't believe it. And I just left it recording, and it caught an owl hooting, which doesn't make sense, does it? In a Victorian terrace, and giggling. It caught giggling and an owl hooting, and I played it to him, and he says, "You've done that." I haven't. No need to bring it up even here, and I hadn't. And then years later, they'd sold the house. I'm coming home from work. I'm in my van, and the new tenants were outside. And I often thought, well, if I ever get a chance to speak to them, I'm going to ask them, have you experienced anything strange in that house? And I did. I asked the question, and they went, do you mean the children? I says, yes. Says, we hear them all the time, running about all the time. Yeah. So, I'm glad David brought that one up. It just sort of kicked in with Linny, and excellent.
So we did, like you said, we didn't know each other then, did we?
No, not at all.
Can I just say today?
Like a mutual friend.
Brilliant.
Okay, can I come in with a question, Paul?
Yeah, of course you can. Yeah.
Right, we've got a question. Well, it's Steve Moore, and he's saying, I would really love to think there is something. I miss my parents. Surely they would visit. And so what's your opinion? And we'll go around the table with that one.
Go on then, start with Ian.
I think so. I mean, you might. I mean, I'm no expert, but you might not have even noticed it. But they'll try and get in touch with you somehow.
Yep. Well, we'll keep this brief then, Tony. So, what do you think? I don't talk because I know he's going to talk to me.
What's good?
Right, Alice,
my internet. Can I just say my internet keeps breaking up? And
yeah, we kind of sussed that, Tony. No worries. So we'll ask Alison. What do you think?
Is it just mine?
Yes. Yeah, just you. We're going to go to Alison. Come on, Alison. What do you think?
I do think there is something. I know my dad visits me. He passed away last year, and I have felt him. Sometimes I've heard him talk to me. So I do think there is something. Definitely.
Right. Thank you. And I think we know Nick and Sarah's views, but I want to hear them.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's more likely to happen if there's a live emotional bond or connection between the person who's passed and the family who are still here or the friends. And it's less likely where there's no connection or where it's a negative connection. I was in Italy for a case. I'm sorry, there's a bit of background noise.
Yeah, it's Tony talking.
Okay. I was in Italy for a case, and I visited parents that had lost their teenage daughter. And the teenage daughter was in the room when I met them for the first time. And she gave me a nudge on my shoulder and said, will you talk to them and tell them that I visit them, but they don't see or hear me? And I said, no. And she said, why not? She said, I've been visiting them every day for 6 years. And sometimes I stand and shout into my mother's ear and she doesn't hear me. And the woman, there was nothing wrong with the woman's hearing. It was obviously the spirit kind of aspect of it, of communication. And she said, but you can hear me. So you can tell her on my behalf. So I said to the woman, do you think your daughter's around? Do you feel that the love that you had, the close relationship is something that will give you comfort if you knew that she visits you regularly? And then the woman said, I don't know you, you're a stranger, but I'm always very worried that if I contact a medium, that I'll get ripped off and I'll be told lies. And the girl said, tell her to take you to my bedroom and look at the middle shelf, because there's a message on one of the magazines about the difficulty of consulting a medium to get in touch with me. I turned to the lady and I said, can you take me to your daughter's bedroom? She said, well, we've never touched it since the day she died. And that was 6 years previously. She said, but yes. I said, I don't want to go into the room. I want you to turn to the bookcase and go to the middle shelf and tell me, is there a pile of magazines there? And if so, what does the top magazine, the top of the pile say? And she went in and said, there is a magazine, pile of magazines, and the top one says, no problemo. In other words, there will not be a problem communicating with me if you consult a medium. And what sticks in my mind is that the father who was there burst into tears and said to me, "Do you think my daughter has come through via you because she knows I'm dying of cancer?" And I turned to the girl and said, "Did you hear that?" She said, "Yes." I said, "Is that the reason you're here?" And she said, "I want my father to be with me, but not yet, because my mother needs him more than I do." And that turned out to be the case because she had mobility issues which weren't obvious to me, and he did all the shopping and the housework and so on. So isn't it interesting that children and relatives can come through and they do have a message, and it is comforting, but it's also very frustrating, I think, because they talk to us and we don't hear them. And then sometimes they communicate for all sorts of reasons. And even when we pick up the fact they're trying to get our attention and move on, we don't give it attention. I mean, psychologists call it cognitive dissonance. The rogue experience is eliminated because you want to have the commonality and of shared experience that everybody else has. And I think spirit get very annoyed with us. They give us wonderful experiences and we move on.
Yeah, thank you. Shall we try Tony one more time? And just what was the question, Les? Because if you can find
bear with me. Yeah, bear with me. The question for Tony is this. I would really love to think there is something. I miss my parents. Surely they would visit. So have you got any thoughts on that, Tony, as regards visitations back from his parents, Steve Moore's parents?
Is this for me, Paul?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So it wasn't.
Yeah, sorry. I'm really sorry, everyone. The internet is really breaking up here.
Yeah.
It depends on if you're in the house where you grew up, live with your parents. The cases I know of, then they have seen them, or the children have seen them. But I think the spirits you would get in your house are the people that lived there before. And in my house, I've had the smell of pipe tobacco. Now, none of us smoke pipe tobacco, or the wife's given it up. But the neighbours don't smoke it either. And yet we get that every now and again. I will smell it very strong in the... It's really weird because there's such a delay on this as well. So I just want to apologise to everybody if I've missed anything. Can I just say to Dave, when he was talking about Plymouth is a very haunted city, and the naval base has got a lot of ghosts. It's just the same as Portsmouth. Portsmouth Naval Base is very haunted, but it's the same for Plymouth because it's as old as Portsmouth. Okay. I've got quite a few stories from people that have worked in the Plymouth Naval Base and have seen things.
So what I want to do now,
I'm going to go out now.
Okay, Tom. Yeah. So we've kind of remembered question, I hope. And what's your thoughts on it, David? I know UFOs are your thing, but
but as we were talking about last week, there's a massive crossover between the world of ufology and the world of the paranormal, links all the way through. And to some people have this particular view now that it's all one phenomena, and that view is becoming more and more common amongst people looking into things in depth. I'm absolutely convinced that can happen in cases. I think that many people don't have the ability to see those spirits, and I think that it varies people's perception. I've in dealing with contact cases more around the world, I've spoken with many people who've got heightened senses, psychic type abilities, if you will. It happens again and again and again with abduction contact cases, and a lot of the time they'll also see ghosts. And I've spoken with many people who've had that direct thing where it's a relative or even a friend of the family, and this sort of thing that they've seen in full apparition form has appeared to them, sometimes speaking to them directly. And in many of those cases, there's been other people present, and the other people present haven't been able to see the apparition, implying that there's a sixth sense, if you will, that some people are stronger with and many people do not possess. But just because we can't see them doesn't mean that they're not there. And I think it's very comforting for many people to know that. And just the amount of cases on record have convinced me that that's a thing. It's it all comes down to the weight of evidence.
Thank you, David. Thanks. Go on then, Paul. And you might. Oh, you got it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, don't worry. I was just being quiet here because I've got a snoring dog and I didn't want to interrupt anybody's points. But enough interruptions. And so, I mean, I kind of consider all the points that everybody else has made. And I think one of the things for me is I think people sometimes get hung up on the fact that it has to be a physical manifestation of somebody they love for it to prove that they've come back. Speaking from personal experience, not me personally, but members of my family, when we had a very famous incident in our family when my auntie sadly passed away of breast cancer. My stepfather was a skeptic. It was all nonsense. She'd obviously, the cancer had spread to the point that she was basically in palliative care at home, and so they often used to use albus oil in a bowl of hot water just to kind of create a nice sort of aroma to help her relax and stuff. And 3 months after she passed, my parents were in bed asleep, and their room was filled with the aroma of such a strength that it woke them both up. And my stepfather, the day after, simply said, "I think we've had a visitor last night," and he would never talk about it again. As far as he was concerned, it was just one of those things. And I think when I've spoke to parapsychologists and people who work in the paranormal and experiences, for me, there's a real variation of these experiences. And I think often, as the question mentions, I think whenever we miss somebody, we automatically think about them. And I think that's one of the aspects of grief, is that it allows us to enable us to understand that we do love somebody because we feel that pain when we think about their loss. But as soon as we start to think of that, we think of them, and immediately it conjures them in our minds. Now, whether that then manifests into some kind of touch from the other side, be it a smell, a presence, even things like, I know a lot of people put faith in seeing a robin or a white feather of occasion. They take that as a sort of visitation from the other side. And I think as long as you can find comfort in something that reminds you of the person you've lost, whether it be a dream, a sensation, an aroma, a time, a place, as long as it conjures up, as soon as that happens, for me, you are automatically transported to remembering them and how you feel about them and the love that you shared. And therefore, I think if people can appreciate that it doesn't just have to be a physical manifestation that comes to you, then you should be able to take solace and comfort in whatever way you see fit.
Thank you. Thank you. Any more questions, Les?
Yeah, I've got a question. Well, actually, Steve Moore is saying, "Hi, Paul. Go Art Bell style. This show could run for hours."
Oh.
So,
Well, yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Yeah.
Okay, Zeno, thanks for the questions so far, and thanks for Lee Roscoe for moderating along with Alison tonight. Zeno is asking, well, he's saying actually what I was talking about earlier on. When people see apparitions, they seem to replay something, a scream, a fall. It's like the Akashic record bleeding through, extremely low vibrational field from fear and stress.
Once again, sort of arcing back to trauma, I suppose. Any views?
No. Any views on the table? No.
There's a lot of cases on record where it does seem to be that, where it seems to be there's some kind of trauma involved.
Yeah.
But then there's also stone tape theory, where you've got lots of just seemingly innocuous apparitions walking along corridors that they used to do in life, like it's playing it back. And there's so many cases like that on record. So you've got different sort of types of apparitions. A lot of the time you find the trauma cases, it's usually a bit more active than that, like poltergeist type cases where it's seeming has some kind of consciousness behind it and is perhaps angry. So
okay, going to harking back to Linny's account of the balloons. Hi Linny, were the balloons filled with helium, as that would imply there would need to be some kind of force needed to keep it down as
good point.
Being held. Yeah,
it was an helium balloon, but before it happened, it was all on the ceiling, in the back room, on the ceiling, and that's where when it did what it did, it came back into the dining room and went and stuck on the ceiling with the others.
Crazy that one, isn't it?
yeah.
So it actually separated itself from a group of balloons.
Yeah, there was maybe half a dozen of them that was left, that was sticky to the ceiling, and there were some little scraggly ones that had sort of like, when they start to lose the helium out of them, they was just on the floor in the corner. But yeah, that was just one that came up from all them and went back.
Fascinating, isn't it?
Okay, I've got an account from Ronnie Adam. I saw a classic Victorian woman ghost in the house in Liverpool. She was black and white and transparent, just like a Dickens type ghost. It was very real, and I have no doubt what I saw.
Yeah, thanks, Ronnie.
Good account, that one, yeah. And another account from
Previous resident.
Yeah. Rachel Martel. My brother died of cancer at stage 42, and he has made his presence known several times, especially in the beginning, and not scary at all. So, yeah.
Do you go on, Nick? Sorry, go on.
Yeah, I was wondering if I could ask a question of the group.
Yeah.
And you'll think I'm cracking a joke here, but it's actually a serious question. Why is it with all these ghosts that come back through, we've just heard of a Victorian lady, they don't come back to do the ironing or the cooking. They don't tidy up. They seem to lose their organisational and hygiene skills. And they come back. He thinks I'm kidding. They seem to come back to either frighten us or to give us mundane messages. But they don't do anything practical, like drop the groceries off or anything.
I am aware, Nick, of a very famous case, which is actually at Rio Opera House in Brazil, and they've got a ghost there that tuts disapprovingly as she watches the cleaners and follows them around, making sure that they're doing a good job. So that's probably the best example I've ever heard of a domesticated ghost coming forwards. I think sometimes with things like that, because they're doing mundane things, I think sometimes people just, it doesn't resonate. And usually people are quite shocked when they see an apparition because it's just somewhere it shouldn't be. But I think sometimes, especially if you're in a busy environment and you walk past a room and there's somebody ironing and you see it out the corner of your eye, sometimes it doesn't register till a couple of minutes later. And then when you go back, there's nobody there and you think, did I see really something? But I think sometimes these mundane sort of apparitions might get misinterpreted or misremembered because people think, well, why would a ghost be doing the ironing? Or like you say, doing the washing up? Because we could all do with a hand in the kitchen occasionally, couldn't we?
Yeah, well, yeah, but what if the spirit, what if the ghost is giving us, what if we talk about thought forms and the ability for us, group of people here, people in chat, to potentially be able to create a thought form? What if the ghosts are creating thought forms for us to see? Do you know? And they might not want to see us ironing. I don't know. But what if that's their ability? What if they are just, I don't know, some kind of sentient energy that's departed, but they're able to create thought forms for us to see. It's difficult to explain, even, but you know.
No, I get the concept. I mean, I know. I've spoken to people that have seen sort of grandparents pottering around in their garden and stuff. I suppose it depends on the person that's passed, Paul.
It would explain. I mean, we're going to talk about clothing. Why do we see them in clothing and things like that? But if they wanted to be seen in what they were familiar with in life. The thought form, the actual spirit creating a thought to put into our mind. I don't know. Just kicking it about.
I mean, there's quite a few cases, isn't there, where people have seen people in younger forms, like they've seen their grandmother, but she's not how she is then. She's how she was on a wedding day or earlier in her life, almost like the ghost is sort of choosing what form it wants to appear in, or maybe that's coming from the witness, but you'd expect them to want to see them in the form that they're in currently, that they know of. But sometimes it's from way earlier in their life when they're younger, almost like they're choosing the form that they appear in, maybe the form that they want to appear in the most, where they're most.
Where they felt good. Yeah, where they felt. Yeah.
It's fascinating.
Can I just
I
say
just like some ghost bakers to come.
Yeah, I know of a case where children have seen a.
Go on, Tony.
Yeah, I know of a case. Sorry about this delay and everything. I know of a case where children have woken up and seen an old lady like looking at them, and then they've then been shown a photo, and it's the grandparent that has been looking over them.
Yeah.
That's happened to a friend of mine. That has. So, but I have heard of other cases like that as well.
Thank you.
Can I just put in there, please?
Yeah, go on.
They've seen a grandparent.
What I want to say is because someone mentioned the grandparent. I've told you the story. It's just a quick story. I've told you this before, and it's fresh in my mind when you're mentioning a grandparent. Was in bed. My wife's on the right hand side. We have built-in wardrobes and a telly in the middle. So I'm just laid there in the bed watching telly, and on the left hand side of the bed, I could see a bit of movement. So I looked down. I'm like, okay. And then I saw movement on the right hand side of the bed and my wife's side. Yeah, okay. Then at the end of the bed, I could see just like glimpses, fleeting glimpses of something. So ridiculously of me, I said out in my mind, well, I know you're in here. Let me have a look at you. And straight away I got woof, right in my face, an old woman's face, really wrinkled, really close eyes, and I nearly shot through the wall. Literally. And my wife was like, what's up? And I says, no. I said, I'm just moving. And she'd fallen asleep. And I told her the next day about it. But the reason I'm saying about the grandparent thing is my grandma, I hadn't seen her for quite a few years before she died. So literally the next day I rung my mother up and I said, it might sound a really strange and bizarre question to ask. I says, but before grandma passed away, was she really wrinkled up? And my mum's reply to that was no. She had lovely skin. So what that was, I haven't a clue. I mean, I spoke to a medium a while later about it, and he says, well, you asked, so it showed you. And it was just a face, just there, straight at me. So,
just before we go to something else, then, I think Alison wanted to say something, didn't you, Alison?
I would just want to say people have seen their relatives in the clothes that they've been buried in, mostly.
All right, okay. Thank you. So where we're going to go now, we've got about 8 to 9 minutes left. I can give Les a shout, see if we've got any questions, Les. I think he's there somewhere, lurking. There we go.
Right then. Okay, I know we've talked about this in some of the answers that we've got from some of the previous questions, but it's from Outer Limits magazine. Chris Evers. If people see ghosts, what do you think they're actually seeing? Is it the soul of a dead person or something else?
I don't know. Is the answer from me, to be honest with you? I mean,
energy.
Energy.
I think it's not. I think it's a question. It doesn't have a one size fits all, because we already know that there are so many variations in the paranormal that I don't think that would be. And also we have so many reports of people coming across spirit animals. Are we then to suggest that the animals now have souls? Because otherwise, why are people having experiences with animals? Because in the technical description of what a soul is, the soul is what defines a human being in certain circles. And therefore, I think I, without wishing to sound churlish, I don't think it's as simplistic as that. I think it could be in certain cases, but I think there are more cases where that clearly isn't the situation that's going on. Personally, anyway.
Thank you.
I'd agree with that. Yeah, variety of different types.
Okay. Any Nick, Linny, any views? No.
I think soul is a really difficult concept, and it's in different cultures and with different religions, you would have different types of interpretations. For me, it's simpler than that. The spirit person who intends to communicate projects a thought form of what they want to show of themselves. So, for example, if you only knew them 30 years ago, they'll project their memory of what they looked like 30 years ago. Because it's all about they project in order that you will recognize and understand and accept. Then they can go on with the message that's brought them here. If they were to show themselves as a decomposing corpse, I think we would all be a lot more concerned about what their motivation was. So it's an energy form created by the thought of the spirit person. And I think we should all accept that since we have an aura, maybe not what auric photographers charge us money for, but if we do have a biofield, then it seems to me it's not a big leap of faith to think that might survive the death of the body.
Thank you.
One of the things that particularly fascinates me is the cases on record where people have seen living apparitions, as in apparitions of people who have not yet passed, and it's often happens in the weeks leading up to them passing away. And there's loads of cases where that thing has been reported and documented. And that gets even more fascinating, doesn't it? Because the person isn't even dead at that point when they're seeing their apparition, and then a week later they'll go. And sometimes they know that it's coming up, so it'll be a few days before, and they'll be aware that they're going to pass, and then they do. It's just really, really fascinating.
It is. It's absolutely.
Yeah, it's like Voyagers as well, because often they get roped in with being a doppelganger, Dave.
Yeah,
the Voyager is obviously when people see somebody like their partner or their children and they think they've come home.
Yeah.
Like they'll hear the door go and they'll hear them banging about, and then they'll go in the kitchen to say, "Oh, how are you doing?" And there's nobody there. And then 20 minutes later, the scene replays in real life.
Yeah.
It's not some kind of event that's about to happen and they're going to lose them. It just carries on and life goes on for normal. Those cases I find more fascinating because they just don't make sense.
Yeah.
Well, we are just briefly. We are going into detail. We had one on Cliff Tops a few weeks ago where one of the lads came up and he got a phone call from his wife because she thought he were in property. Am I wrong, Linny?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, walking about.
Yeah. So anyway, I don't know where we're going with this. We've got 3 or 4 minutes. Sorry, Ian, I couldn't throw you there.
That's all right.
Okay.
Go on, Les.
Is everybody finished for that one? I'll be able to get this one in, I'm sure. It's a pretty in-depth one. Tetrastatic. Is it possible that we do live in some sort of matrix and have an expiry date, and if we take our own lives or die from a contracted disease, we still have to be here in some sort of way until our end date?
I don't know about that really. Great question, but that doesn't explain ghosts, for want of a better word, that are seen over hundreds of years. Then would it? Because surely end date you would have terminated if we were going with natural lifespan way before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get very frustrated when I read or hear modern scientists and philosophers telling us that nothing exists except what we create in our consciousness. And it just seems to be so much nonsense. I'd be delighted if somebody could give me a scientific explanation that made common sense. But quantum mechanics, quantum physics suggest that the act of perception or observation creates physical reality. And my response to that is to say, come and join me on the railway track. Perceive what you like, but you're going to get flattened if you don't recognize what's coming towards you. And similarly with the motorway. So when I think, do we live in some sort of matrix? we live in a world where expectations can shape our perceptions, but there is an external reality that will flatten you if you don't watch what you're doing.
Yeah. Thank you. And where are we now, Les? Time-wise?
I've got a couple of minutes, I guess. I suppose we could go a minute or two over.
Yeah.
That's all right by you guys. John Alexander, could it be that sometimes we see so-called ghosts but are having an encounter with ourselves, a sort of 180-degree experience? Any thoughts on that?
I suppose, I think we've got to have all cards on table. Anything's possible, and that's not really answered out, has it? It's my staple explanation.
The SSPR in Scotland produced Christmas cards in which 2 or 3 ghosts were sitting around a dining table, and the caption from one of the ghosts read, "Tell me, do you think human beings exist?"
Good point.
I think it's sometimes quite good to flip things round 180 degrees and just consider what seems the opposite of the truth in order to see if it sheds any light in things. And I think I could be wrong. I could be a majority of one here. But I do think that we must give them some laughs. You don't lose your sense of humour in the spirit world. I think they must be rolling about the place at our stupidity.
I'll tell you what. We're careful with your answers here, Linny. But it must be like interesting for ghosts actually watching us at times, and some of the things we get up to. Do you know? I mean, it's a frightening concept, isn't it? When you think that your parents are somewhere out there or your friends are out there. So yeah, just a thought. We don't want to go deep down that rabbit hole.
Someone asked me that once.
You what?
Someone asked me that once. He said, "Do you think they could be around all the time?" And I said, "Well, yeah, probably." And he says, "Yeah, but what if you?" I went, "Yeah." Depending on how good his internet is, isn't it?
Well, I always like the stories. There aren't many of them, but there are a few stories of people who have encounters with ghosts who look as shocked as they do to see each other.
Yeah.
And they suggest that there obviously is some kind of 180 degree. There aren't many of them, but I really like those kinds of encounters because they make me chuckle.
Absolutely, yeah. They explore that in the film The Others, which I'm sure you've all probably seen, where they thought they were seeing ghosts, and it was the other way around, and there were people observing them. Yeah. Really fascinating and a superb twist. Really good. And I've just ruined it for anybody who hasn't seen it yet. Absolutely one of the best ghost films on record. Though. Do go and check it out.
The Others.
Okay, and conscious of the time now. We are over time, guys, and been a brilliant show tonight. And thanks for all of you who've come on tonight and give your answers to some of these fairly awkward questions, I guess. The last word actually goes to Ronnie Adam, and he's asking Paul, "Where's your costume?"
Yeah, sorry, Ronnie, but hey, Alison and Paul Bestel.
Sorry, Ronnie. Got his costume.
Yeah, well, if there's an award, if there's an award going for costumes tonight, who do you think it'd go to?
And Linny's dog. I think we'd have to say the nun looks quite frightening, doesn't she? You know?
Yeah. Well, people in the chat.
The alien mask as well. So seriously, guys.
Right. Yeah. Thank you very much.
David, Alison, Tony, Nick, and Sarah, and Paul and Les. Great. Thanks for your time. It really is. It's good of you to share your time with us, and great to share this with audience. Thank you.
And thank you for the invitation.
Cheers.
Thank you very much. And we're going to leave the last word with Alison's going to close the show down. She doesn't know this, but I'm going to bring her on full screen, and she's going to close it all down and thank everybody for being part of the show. Take it away, Alison.
Thank you. You left me on the spot. Thank you, everyone in chat tonight. As I always say, you're very much appreciated. And happy Halloween.
Thank you.